special report. Tonight we bring you a report on oil spills and the impacts that they have on our aquatic ecosystems around us. I have Amy Klein here. She is a limnologist with the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority. I also have Guscma over here, who is a biological researcher with the Ministry of the Environment. The most interesting thing that I've learned since I started my research is that the seasons of the year can impact the quality or the non-quality that an oil spill has on the environment. If an oil spill happens in the spring, the plants they're just starting to get developed at that time of year. So basically, they need all the nutrients and all the good that they can get. If an oil spill happens, they're obviously not going to get that good. So it's not really a good thing, you know what I mean? So now I'll introduce Rob. He's our researcher who's with us tonight, and he's going to talk about a few more important issues. Come on down, Rob.
Thank you, Matthew.
You're welcome.
So first off, what you want to do is you want to identify an environmental safety index.
Can I just jump in here for a second? Can you explain to the viewers what an environmental safety index is?
So essentially what this is, Matt, is it's a map, and it's designed to determine where the flow of the oil will go, what banks it's going to wash up to, the sensitive areas, and enables us to target those areas in the unfortunate event that there is an oil spill. If it's a low lentic environment, it means the water is still, it doesn't move very much like a pond or a lake. And what happens is the oil will pool up on the sides, it'll stay in concentrated areas, and essentially sinks to the bottom of the water. And quite often once the oil gets into it, the waves and the movement of the water actually helps filter out the oil, so it has less impact than that of a lentic system.
Thank you very much, Rob, for that information. Now we're going to bring in Amy, our limnologist. Come on down, Amy. Welcome. Please tell us a bit about your topic, and I understand you have a few key cases that you're going to relate to.
Yes, I do, Matthew. One of my topics is I want to talk about the effects of the weather on the progression of oil in lentic systems.
So that can have something to do with the time of the year as well?
Yes, very
Okay,
much so.
okay. Thank you very much, Amy, for that introduction. Over the next few minutes, my colleagues have put together a slideshow that's going to show some very interesting pictures. And as these pictures are coming up, they'll discuss what's going on, and Amy's going to discuss a few other issues that happened in terms of oil spills over the last few years.
Thank you, Matthew. This is a classic example of what happens when oil meets the water. It collects on the banks of the rivers, affecting surrounding vegetation, and the animals tend to consume it as well. This damages the littoral zone as well as the riparian vegetation and destroys habitats and feeding grounds for other animals. Eventually this oil finds its way down to the benthic zone. This presence of oil may remain present for decades, allowing the poison cycle to continue for several years. Some fish confuse this new substance as a food source and in turn consume it. In this sediment, there's several invertebrate that live there. You can tell the water quality as well from these insects simply by sorting them out. The amount of insects that you have, there's three classes. There's ones that are very sensitive, ones that are moderate, and the ones that are very tough like leeches. If you're only finding like leeches in this benthic zone, it's a good indication there's something wrong with the water. Whereas if you find a lot of sensitive insects such as stoneflies or catflies, it would indicate that the water quality is very good.
Thanks for that, Rob. If we can just pause you for a second. Amy has something that she'd like to touch on with benthic macroinvertebrates. She's going to go into detail a little more on that.
Here's this video of some of the species of macroinvertebrates. On November 5th, 1990, near Ethel, Missouri, there was a pipeline break resulting in 415,000 liters of light crude oil into the lower 90 kilometers of the Chariton River. For this experiment, 10 leaf packs made from the leaves of the surrounding trees were mounted vertically into the sand substrate at 5 different sample sites. 2 were placed upstream of the spill and 3 were placed below. 2 sample times were done. The first was immediately after the spill, and the second was 1 year after. The results for the 1990 sample was that 66 macroinvertebrates were collected. The dominating species included stoneflies, blackfly larvae, trichopteran, dancefly, and midges. The number of invertebrates was greatly reduced.
Macroinvertebrates are not the only insects or animals that suffer from a oil spill. Animals rely heavily on their sense of smell. Odor in the air makes it extremely difficult for the offspring to find their parents, and unfortunately many offsprings die from starvation. It also interrupts breeding grounds for many species that produce shells from their offspring, such as turtles, birds, are also subject to deformities as a result of the oil. When oil mixes with water, it becomes very tacky and clingy onto the fur of animals and birds. This interferes with their natural regulatory system of their body temperature, ultimately causing them to die from hypothermia. Majority of birds that become covered with oil die without human help. Several studies have also shown that as little as 1% of oil-covered birds will survive, as much as 90% will die after being cleaned by humans.
A lot of people don't understand that freshwater ecosystems differ greatly from oceanic systems, and they should be treated differently. In an experiment conducted, it assessed the toxicity of 2 different types of oil, South crude, also known as SLS, and diesel fuel, and 2 different types of chemical additives that are used to help try and clean up oil spills. Dispersant Corvette 9500 and the cleaner Corvette 9580. The results of this experiment were conclusive. Diesel is much more toxic than SLS, which was judged by the mortality rate of 3 different specimens. Treatment with chemical dispersant is more toxic than cleaner. However, cleaner is more toxic than adding nothing to the oil. Both the dispersant and the cleaner are toxic without the presence of soil. And most importantly, the toxicity of SLS and diesel increased with the additives, and this enhancement persisted over time. Therefore, chemical additives are not suitable for cleaning up oil spills in or near freshwater marshes.
It's my understanding that they've come up with a new way of fixing these problems. It's far more environmentally friendly. They refer to it as bioremediation. Can you just go in and explain a little bit of that to us?
What this is it allows the natural process to clean up harmful chemicals in the environment using microbes that live in the soil and the groundwater and like to eat harmful chemicals, such as those found in gasoline and oil spills. When microbes completely digest the chemicals, they then change it into water and a less harmful gas, such as carbon dioxide. First, the microbe eats all the oil. Next, the microbe digests all the oil and changes it into a harmless gas. And then finally, the microbe releases the water and releases the gases into the soil and or groundwater. So what it also does is it helps form and clump up the oil, so it can be then floats on the surface and is more easily to collect as well.
From what we can tell, time of year also has a severe impact on the severity of an oil spill. Amy is now going to tell us a little bit about that and how it is affected by the time of year.
On November 28, 2000, 1,925 tons of crude oil was spilled into the Mississippi River. Because of the time of year, the cool weather reduced the oil's temperature below its pour point, resulting in a margin-like consistency. During the days preceding the spill, the winds kept at a low speed and in a single direction, resulting the oil to move slower and keep to the west side of the bank. The cleanup of the river included high and low volume flushing and vacuuming of the ripraps, sand flaps, sloughs, and marshes. Some of the vegetation of the west bank also had to be removed. In total, 89% of the total released oil was cleaned up, leaving 204 tons remaining. In this case, the cool weather was greatly beneficial to the success of the cleanup, as well as the quick response and knowledge of the cleanup team.
So thank you very much for joining us tonight, Amy and Rob. It's been a great show. We've learned so much about oil spills, how they impact our aquatic ecosystems. We've learned about seasons, we've learned about bioremediation. Hopefully you guys can take all this home with you and learn a little bit tonight. Did you know that oil spills happen more in freshwater environments than along any marine coastal line? Oil hurts beaches.